What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD interview. Every single week we interview top entrepreneurs and just straight up top badasses that are out there dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create epic, amazing lives for themselves and for their family. So today, you guys, we got another special guest on the show today. Our guest today is a doctor, an entrepreneur, a coach, a speaker, now an author. So a guy doing a lot of big things. So really excited to have Dr. Don on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. You know, I was on your site. You know, what's so cool about this is, you know, I know, you are a chiropractor or a doctor chiropractor. You had a lot of success there. You're coaching a lot of other chiropractors in that space. And, you know, I'm reading your different pillars. And I'm like, gosh, this applies to every single business. And that's what I love about all the commonalities. And so I'm really excited to dive in. But before we do that, man, I'm really interested in your journey that led you here. You know, what got you into entrepreneurship in the first place? But one in that clocks, whether it's junior high, high school, college, you know, what led you to this path?
I think I had a huge influence from my parents, because my dad was he basically was the milkman. I grew up in a really small town, and he was like door-to-door milkman, and you know, chasing out the dogs and looking after people, delivering milk. He also expanded that to he had a Pepsi distributorship. We had a bottle return place, so you know, I spent a lot of my days sorting through disgusting bottles that people puked in and stuff like that, which was good motivation for me to get a career outside of that. And one of the coolest things was he had an ice business where we would bag ice and then we'd sell it to the stores, and then people would have it for parties and stuff like that. And he basically said to me, "How'd you like to take it over?" And so it was cool, because we sold our bags of ice for $1 a bag. And I would get 25 cents a bag for bagging it, and I'd get 25 cents a bag for delivering it. And so I spent my whole summer just storing up the freezer full, ready for, like, we're from Canada, right? So our summer's pretty short. So May long weekend was like, let's get some ice in the stores. We gotta make some money, you know. So, and the whole cool thing was I had to prepare. I had to learn how to prepare, because when the summer came, if you didn't have enough ice done, you ran out of stock. You ran out of stock, you can't sell anything. So I think all through high school, I spent my time looking after the ice business, and I think that was my first real taste of entrepreneurship.
So then what led you into becoming a doctor, going into chiropractic, which then again, you know, I don't know if you planned on essentially being an entrepreneur again, but you know, it's how it evolves. So what then led you down that path?
Well, in high school, well, first of all, before that, I'm Canada. I grew up playing hockey. So I was playing hockey, had my big growing spurt. Like right now I'm 6'4", but I think now I'm 235. So I'd have been the perfect size to play hockey. But, you know, in high school, you get that big growing spurt and you're all gangly. So I was all gangly playing hockey, and I got killed. Like, I just got hurt so many times. We grew up in a small town where all we had was just medical doctors. We didn't have physiotherapists or chiropractors or anything. So if ever we got hurt, we just go to the doctor and we just take drugs. Or just wait until the pain went away and then you go back into it. But my mom was basically said, you know what, that hockey's too dangerous. I want you to get into something else. So I took up basketball. And one of the cool things was, after my first year playing basketball, my basketball coach said, hey, you know what, I think you have some potential with basketball, so you should go to this basketball camp. And I went to his basketball camp in the summer. And after 1 week of basketball camp, I came back and my skills just went, oh. And so from that point on, I was going to be a basketball player. So that's all I cared about. And actually what brought me into chiropractic is I started developing a thing called patella tendonitis. And I also had exercise-induced asthma. And I was struggling all the way through high school. I left my small town in grade 12 to go to the city to play higher level basketball. And we won basically like the state championship in Canada. It's called the provincial championship. And by the time I got to my first year of college, I'd suffered for 4 years with just debilitating, like my knees were hurting all the time. And I was trying to be the best I could be, but I was always at about 60, 70% all the time. And it was so frustrating. I finally got told about chiropractic. And I went in there, and like within that 1 year under chiropractic care, where totally changed my posture, totally changed my knees, totally helped my focus, totally helped everything with my immune system. I was sleeping better. My free throw shooting percentage went up because I could focus better. That after that year, I'm like, man, that's it. I'm switching in to science. I always have a funny little thing, because when I first went to college, I took, it's called, if they had basket weaving, I would have took basket weaving, but they had a thing called recreation administration, and the reason I picked recreation administration because I seriously went through the syllabus and I looked to see what was the easiest program because I didn't want my school to interfere with my basketball. Like that's how important it was to me. So it kind of turned out funny that actually then I got more serious about school and I went to chiropractic school in Davenport, Iowa, and so I've been in practice now for 18 years and I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's odd how life happens and we discover those passions, you know. So, quick question about your basketball camp, though. You know, what do you know? Because you went to that basketball camp, so I mean, you're a good player. Then you go to this basketball camp, and within a week, you come back that much better. You know, like what do you feel that it was at that camp, that intense training that you had, that just magnified your skills in such a short period of time?
Well, I think we probably all heard that saying, success leaves clues, right? So when I went away to this basketball camp, it was a college camp. So a lot of the instructors were college basketball players that were just working there in the summer. And some of the lead instructors were coaches from the college. And my coach, you know, he was a great coach. He helped us out, but he didn't have those skills that you would at the highest level. And I think the other thing was too, is that not only was it the coaches, but obviously when you have a camp, it'd be like a seminar, I'd sort of say, like it doesn't matter what field you're in. Usually it's the cream of the crop that want to do better that go to that in the first place. So not only are you around awesome information, but you're also around better people. So it forces you to kind of take the next level. So I think that was kind of, and I think that was also a big learning experience for me, that if you don't have the skills, you can go and get them. Like, I think that was a huge thing.
Yeah, I love it. It's like that saying, eagles soar together, you know, and A players got to roll with A players. And I know that your book talks a lot about that. And we'll get into later about network and power of networks. I know we were talking off air about that. So, okay, so you decide you got this new passion. You go to chiropractor school. You become a chiropractor doctor. So then what happens? I mean, you're jumping in because I mean I know now again today, just so our audience can hear. I mean, I don't know if you're still practicing chiropractor, but you're coaching and consulting a lot of chiropractors on. So then not only did you become a great chiropractor, but you learn how to make money at it, which is two different things, you know, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Huge. Well, I think I started out, and it's that, you know, you come out of school and you think you're going to rock it, and just about every new grad I hear, they're all like, wow, that's harder than I thought it was going to be. Because you think just getting through school, like you got, okay, I'm a doctor now, like now it's just going to open up my doors and it's going to be awesome. But it's not. Like you have to grow. And the thing about chiropractic, which is really cool, is we have an awesome product, because the product's amazing. But we have what's called negative brand equity, which means if someone's never been to a chiropractor before, there's a lot of kind of weird things out there about what chiropractors do, and there's a little bit of angst around it. So it's really important to learn how to do those communication skills when you're kind of explaining what chiropractic is and getting the message out about your clinic. But I did a horrible job of it for the first 5 years in practice. Like I basically opened my door and I kind of did it like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come, except they didn't come.
Yep.
So I had the first 5 years was really challenging. And then it was interesting thing is my wife had a huge health turnaround under chiropractic care. And when I first met her, she called me a fake doctor. She was working in a bar. And so she was the beer tub girl. And so I came up to the beer tub girl. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And and I was with a buddy of mine, and I went to the bathroom, and my buddy's like, hey, you know, my friend really likes you. And he's a doctor. And she said, oh, really? So what kind of doctor? And I came back right at that time, and he said, well, he's a chiropractor. And she's like, oh, that's like a fake doctor, isn't it? Like, don't you like hurt people? Like, aren't you quacks? And I'm like, whoa. So it was a challenge at the beginning, but once she learned what it was, she had a huge health turnaround under chiropractic care, and it ended up matching out that her skill was with basically human resources. So she was one of the youngest executive directors of a nonprofit agency in our city. Like when I met her, she wasn't at that level yet, but she got to that level, and I was having a hard time with staff because as chiropractors, we come out, we learn our skills, right? But then we just don't learn how to hire staff, how to train staff, how to kind of keep that communication going to take it to the next level. And I'm more of an amiable personality, so I'm super influenced by the people around me. And I made the biggest mistake when I first got out of school to hire people that were exactly like me. Because if I did interviews, and I'm like, well, that person's just like me. So I'd hire those people. The only problem is when you hire people exactly like you, they suck at the same things
Yeah.
that you suck at. And they don't like doing the same things you don't like doing. And so it makes it like there's too many of the same people. So I kind of learned that. But I actually asked her if she would quit her job and come in and help me with my practice. And at the time I wasn't doing very good. She's like, you know what, I don't think we'll be able to make it on your salary or what you're doing and my salary. And I said, you know what, you'll be amazed. If you come and help me hit my potential in my practice, we'll way overperform over that. And so she took a leap of faith, and that was about 12 years ago, came into my practice. Within 18 months, my practice tripled. And that was actually from me not doing anything extra, but that was for me doing less. So it was about me just focusing on the things that I'm really good at. And then she took over a lot of the other things. And then from that time, blew up the practice. She started training other chiropractic assistants, and then also started training other chiropractors on same thing that I was trying to learn, was staff management, communication, like getting all the word out. And she started traveling, I started coaching. So we've been doing that for the last probably about 10 years. She's spoken now, I think, in 9 different countries, and she's probably one of the top chiropractic speakers, if that's a word, out there.
Yeah, I love it because and I see a lot of husband and wife teams end up creating success together, because it's typically when you get married, opposites attract, and that's like you said, who you really want inside your company. You want the opposite, just like when you're playing basketball. Like, you don't want the same as you. You want somebody that has a skill set that you don't. And so those first 5 years, that you were really struggling with that. Couldn't walk us through what some of those obstacles were that you had to overcome and what that looked like before you got it right. Because we have a lot of listeners right now that are in the corporate world that are wanting to transition into entrepreneurship. And I think that there's, everybody talks about successes and how sexy they are, but I don't think a lot of people really understand those initial challenges that entrepreneurship can face, which is not to scare people away, but I think people really need to prepare for like what the hell you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. And I think, knowing yourself first, because I think if you kind of understand what your personality style is, you'll know where your hiccups are going to be. And mine is more an amiable personality. So I kind of fall into that people pleaser mentality. And so when I first got into practice, I would be afraid to get any rejections. So I wouldn't ask for the sale, or I wouldn't ask for someone to go on what I knew they should for a treatment plan. So, for example, if someone was quite serious and needed some extensive care, I would just try to give it to them in little bits, because I didn't want them to ever come back to me and say no, which now I'm like, I do want to know, or I do want to yes, because my biggest thing in coaching now is let's close the loop, because that was one of my biggest issues, is that I would never really make a good agreement with any new patient or client. So it was always open-ended. So it was always so stressful, because every single time we'd have a visit, we'd almost be negotiating another visit. And then we do that over and over. And every single person you saw you do that, it would just be so exhausting. So it was just like,
yeah. So
I think it's just getting clear on that communication was a huge learning experience for me.
Yeah, it's so sad that, and this isn't for just the medical industry. This is just college and schooling in general. They don't really prep you for. They prep you in a certain way, right? Like you said. But we're seeing MDs, and all across the board that are really struggling because they don't know how to run the business side, and with there's certain healthcare restrictions, it's becoming more and more challenging of how to go out there and do that. And it's sad that there isn't more of that. I went to business school, and there really wasn't even effective business training in business school, right? But the cool thing is there's people like you that people can reach out to for probably far cheaper than ever thinking about going to college for, and get those tactics. So when your wife jumped in, what were some of the immediate things that you guys did? I know you talked about some of the staffing, but what were some of the immediate things that you did, and with that, and maybe some other things that you did that really turned it around in that 18 months?
I think the number one thing was training. We never really did training because I think subconsciously I felt like it was uncomfortable to do. Like right now we do a lot of role playing. Like, so we're like, in this situation, how do you do this? How do you answer the phone? How do you answer this objection? How do you do this? This is what I do when I'm talking to a patient. This is how I do the pass off. This is how you explain the fees. And then practicing it regularly, because over time, there's a thing called entropy that I didn't know about. And entropy basically means that if anything is left without maintaining it in time, it starts to break down into its smaller components. So it's like even the earth, right? We have a big earthquake and then it creates the nice jagged mountains. And over time, they just start to get all soft and worn down over time just because of the way things go. So anytime we have procedures or systems set up in our office, if we're not constantly practicing them on a regular basis, they just start to get slack. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just human nature just to kind of like, oh, I left out that part. Oh, I left out this part. Oh, I left out that part. I think Stephen Covey called it sharpening the saw. Like, you got to make sure like what you're doing is still working and what you initially learned how to do it right if you're still doing it that way. So I think she set up some regular meetings and regular staff meetings. And these aren't just little meetings. Like, before we'd have a meeting, which would be like, basically it'd be a bitch session, like, what's not working? Oh, you did this, we did that, which really isn't super productive, right? It would be more like we'd have little meetings like that. We still need to address those issues, but then we'd have a 3-hour training. And one of the biggest things I learned from her too is how you do anything is how you do everything. So our staff training is halfway divided between personal development and our procedures, because we know that when our staff go home and exercise, look after themselves, keep purposeful and do the things they love, they come back and they do a better job at whatever their job is. So our goal is not to make great employees. Our goal is to try to make great people and kind of do what you do on your podcast. This podcast is like trying to maximize your growth, because when you're maximizing your growth and you're on fire about life, you're better at everything. You're a better wife. You're a better owner for your dog. You're like, you're just better in all different aspects, I think.
Yeah, it's like, Jim Rohn's one of his famous quotes out there. He's got so many, but he's like, the moment that you learn to work harder on yourself than you do in your job is when your life changes. And it's hard to really understand that, I think, until you've been in the position where you've done it and you've experienced it. And, did you ever think that when you got into chiropractic and open up your practice that you'd be sitting there and doing sales role playing and, all those things that you were doing? I mean, was that something that just kind of took you by surprise? Yeah, lose you there?
Oh, I'm there now. You just froze for a second.
Okay. No, you implemented and instituted all of the training and the meetings and the self-development and when you're doing that, what were some of the things that maybe you tweaked with marketing, right? Because that's what I see a lot of times too of entrepreneurs, maybe not knowing how to really get their message out there. So you got internally the systems and the staff dialed in. Did you make any shifts with educating the general public on the services and what you guys were doing, or is it more just growth within?
We did both, because again, you do want to have those internal systems, because the best new clients you can ever get are referrals, because they already know what to expect. So they're already pre-qualified and pre-educated before they come in. But one of the things I did have to learn how to do is I had to get out of my 4 walls, because basically I thought I seriously was going to just open my doors and not have to leave my place and people were just going to come flooding to me, and that just wasn't the case. And so I just, socially, like, I played hockey, I played basketball, all those kind of things. As soon as you get out there, start talking to people, spread the message of what you do, that's a really good way to bring in stuff. We also started doing like trade shows. Like, for us, we go to trade shows. So we'd find out what's our ideal target market. Our ideal target market are going to be the baby boomers. So if we go to a home renovation show, it was hilarious, because a lot of times we'd be in a home renovation show and somebody would come by and say, hey, what's chiropractor doing at home renovation show? I'm like, well, if you've lost your health and you're exhausted and you can't function, how are you supposed to renovate your house? Yeah. Oh, good point. I'm like, you can't do anything in this whole place. So unless you're healthy, you can't actually do anything in this place unless you hire someone else to do it. So we get out in the community, start to meet people. I also started doing corporate talks, because I'm really big. My big thing, and again, same with my book, is a big thing is about stress reduction. And so we started doing corporate talks where we go to any of the big corporations, and a lot of them, again, we talk about employees. They want to keep their employees healthy because they're more productive. And so we'll just we had one of our staff phone around and just ask, like, would you like to have any lunch and learns, have some stress management for employees? And so then I just do like half an hour or 1 hour talks for large companies, and at the end just give them an opportunity if they wanted to come in for an evaluation, and that was a huge growth spurt for me too. So those are the 2 main things that I did getting out physically. But again, at the same time, building those internal systems so that we actually, after the first or second visit, people are like so excited. They're like, wow, that's cool. Like, I need to get my brother in here. I need to get my friend in here. This is a cool place. I want to spread the word about it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that you brought that up because businesses are. It's it's your marketing, then your processes, of course, systems holding together. But yeah, you can have all the people you want flooding in that door, but if you're not getting the results and you can't get them reoccurring and selling them, then it does you no good. So so then what? So you're turning your business around, and now you guys are doing very well for yourself. What led to the coaching and instead of just building and continuing to grow your practice? I mean, what was that bridge that led to that path?
I think it was just I had a few people ask me about it. I was always interested in coaching because I just think it would be fun to give back. It's kind of like once you hit a certain level, it's kind of nice to be able to share that. And I traveled quite a bit. My wife initially started speaking like 12 years ago, and now I travel with her to all the cool places. Like we're joking around, and nothing against Saskatoon in Canada, but like if she go to Saskatoon, I'd be like, oh, I might stay home for that. But if she gets invited to speak in Lima, Peru, or Sydney, Australia, or in Auckland, New Zealand, or in London, England, or in Rome, I'm in on those ones. So the cool thing is I got to meet tons of chiropractors. So you start to see this pattern of what people are having challenges with. And then when we've had those same challenges and we've been able to overcome them, it's easy to open up the conversation and say, oh yeah, well, we've experienced those same challenges and this is kind of how we did it. And why don't we maybe work together a bit? And so for the last probably 7 years or so, I've been coaching other chiropractors on the side as well to help them grow their practice as well.
Do you ever feel yourself being more torn toward one or the other, where you see yourself maybe, hopefully, maybe the day will never come where you got to pick and choose, but, if you had to pick and choose, or do you see yourself, being more passionate about one?
I think the having the difference is good. You were just talking about, just for pre-call, how exciting this podcast is because you get to talk to a lot of different people, and it keeps things exciting and going. I would never want to not be a chiropractor or not practice because I just love it. I would definitely, even what I've done lately is I've decreased my hours. So I'm only working 3.5 days seeing patients. And then I'm working on my other days with coaching and doing stuff with promoting my book because I'm kind of not only doing the coaching for chiropractors, but now I'm kind of spreading out a little bit into like kind of the stress management side, with the launch of my new book. But I think I would always like to keep my feet in the trenches, so to speak, because it just keeps it real. Like when you're at ground zero, where you're just with the people and seeing what issues day-to-day regular people have all the time. I think it just keeps it fresh. And so I think I would like to keep the blend. And again, I guess every year, whatever that percentage might change depending on how I'm feeling, right? But right now, it's working good the way it is.
Yeah, and I agree with you about keeping in the trenches. It's one of those things where you see a lot of coaches that get too far detached, and it's almost like they forget what it really is like to grow that business. So I love that. So now, okay, so you're getting these systems and processes in place, but a lot of entrepreneurs have a difficult time delegating, right? So you're only working 3.5 hours a week, meaning that you probably are taking on other chiropractors and doing other things. How did you get to the point where you could let go? Because I know it's so tough for people. And then how do you inspect what you expect? So when you're on the road and traveling and doing all this stuff, that you can keep an eye on things.
Well, I learned this from one of my patients, and one of my patients is like one of the most successful real estate guys obviously he's the most successful guy I know. He owns tons of real estate here. He has like ownership in a private jet, and he like lives in Phoenix and Vancouver and Edmonton, and he flies all around. And he's been a patient of mine since day one, and he's just like kind of a quiet guy. So when I first opened my practice, I didn't even know he was this successful, but he wouldn't want to see anybody but me. So I'm his chiropractor, and that's it, period. And one time I was like, when I found out how successful he was, I was like, hey, we have a little mastermind with a few chiropractors or buddies of mine. If we take you out for dinner, could we come out and pick your brain? And he said, sure. And so we said, what do you think is your key to success? Like, how did you grow these multitude of companies where he was real estate, now he owns golf courses and car dealerships and all this other stuff? And he said, number one thing is to find the right people. And once he finds the right people, like me, I'm his chiropractor, like I'm his chiropractor for life. Like that's the way he is. When he invited us out, Paul McCartney came to Edmonton like a few years back, and he took all his healthcare providers, and we had this luxury suite for his healthcare providers, which was cool. It was his dentist, his medical doctor, his lawyer, and we got to hang out and watch Paul McCartney in this like high-end fancy thing. And his manager for Edmonton was there too. And I found out his manager for Edmonton was his helper when he built his very first house. So he built his very first house, and the first guy he hired is now managing all of his stuff in Edmonton, which is hilarious. And the funny thing about it was a couple of years ago, he had his 40-year party in Edmonton where 800 of his employees came out. And he had an honorary table for the couple that bought his first house 40 years ago, and they still live in his first house. So the guy, he had no money, but he wanted to be a developer, and he started with his first house, and he just kept those relationships. So number one thing I did to be able to delegate was bring in my wife, because at first I didn't train people enough or pick them out enough to trust them. And so if I didn't trust them, I was always listening to the front, and I couldn't be totally focused on what I was doing all the time. So the first thing was I had my wife in there, which I totally trusted. I could totally separate from what was going on up in the front and just focus 100% on what's going on with my people. And then after I did that, I saw the benefits of it, that I'm like, wow, like this is huge. I can grow my practice by doing less, not by just doing more. That now we focus all of our time and energy on getting the right people. Now we have a manager for our office who's like one of my wife's best friends, and we like trust her with our life. Like you just get the right person, and we can work out all the rest of the stuff. We can work on training, we can work on skill, but they always say you hire your staff for skill and then you end up firing them for personality because you don't trust them. So I think that was the evolution of listening to the master and then getting that help with my wife.
Yep, love it, man. So, all right, so, I mean, your practice is taking off. You guys are speaking all over the place, continue to grow. What then leads to the book?
Well, I call it climbing Everest without bringing oxygen. So sometimes what happens, and again, this is the whole idea for my book, is when you got people pleaser over here, and you have ambition over here, and as you fire your ambition up, and you want to hold on to your people pleasing, a lot of times things unravel, and that is what unraveled for me, because I was in a practice with my sister, and that I brought my wife into, and we started growing, and we had some communication things, so that whole thing unraveled, which kind of made a huge family stress. At the same time as I was growing, I was still doing all the stuff that I do when I was quiet. So when I wasn't seeing very many people, I could play basketball, I could play hockey, I could stay up later with my buddies, drink some beers, maybe not have enough sleep before I went to work. I started cutting out my exercise program, and what happened is I went too far the other way. So you kind of talk about the Underdog Curse. I started off as an underdog, kind of addicted to that, where I was kind of like a failure to launch. Like I had a hard time getting things moving. And then once you get some success, I went to the other side where you just get stubborn and just fire stuff through, and it's not sustainable. And so what happened is my health totally deteriorated. I burnt myself out. I was playing basketball without staying in regular shape and tore cartilage in my knee. And then for a year I had to keep practicing in this busy practice. I tore a tendon in my finger. I'm basically limping around, like trying to do my job. Like when you're busy and you know you're there for your people, and you have to fake that you're awesome when you're really inside, you're like dying inside. It was brutal. And so I had to go through the whole rebuild phase. And then I think the pinnacle of it all was a really good friend of mine that I met as a patient of mine. It's just one of those times, you probably know that too. If you ever met with someone and you kind of click and you're like, hey, I think we should hang out. He's like, hey, let's go golfing sometime. And so we went golfing. Him and his wife and me and my wife got on really good. So we started like hanging out more, going on holidays, having a great time. Then all of a sudden he started getting this weird little problem with his hand. and we couldn't figure out what it was. And so I was trying to get second opinions, and I had a neurologist who's a really good friend of mine, a chiropractic neurologist from Dallas. I had him coming up to Edmonton to do some seminars, and I had him see my buddy Rob, and we went out for dinner this one night, and I'm like waiting for him to tell me how we're gonna fix him, because in my brain I'm like, somehow we can fix this, like this is solvable. And his name is Dr. Michael Hall, and he didn't say one thing during the dinner. And I'm like, dude, you're supposed to be helping me out here. Like, come on, like, give me, you know everything. Come on, because he's like the smartest dude I know. And so driving him home after, I was like, why didn't you say anything at dinner? Like, and he says, man, I hate to tell you this, dude, but he has atypical ALS. And I'm like, no. Because out of anything, that was in the back of my mind, but out of any disease he could possibly have had, don't let it be ALS, because ALS basically slowly destroys your motor nerves until you become paralyzed in your body, and then you basically just die because you can't breathe. Like, it's a brutal disease. So I had to switch from trying to help him, like in my mind as a chiropractor, to now I had to help my buddy die. And so coming to that realization and taking 2 years and golfing with him for the last time, swimming with him for the last time, downhill skiing with him for the last time, till he finally could only walk for the last time, till he could only talk, because he couldn't even talk at the end. And he had to like just blink in his eyes to be able to write on Facebook, because he had a special computer that could actually he could pick out the letters, but it would take him like 2 hours just to write a paragraph kind of thing. And just to see him, when we went through that process, I was always into personal development and say, hey, how can we expand ourselves? And he's like, oh man, I got lots of time. Like, because when he passed away, he was only 45. And when he finally realized he had no time left, he actually on Facebook had his biggest legacy ever. He had like thousands of people following him on Facebook. He was like basically coaching and cheering people on who were going through tons of challenges, and he was a super inspiration for everybody. And then right before he died, I was in Mexico. I was in Cabo San Lucas, and we're just waiting for the plane to come back from a holiday, and I get a text from him, and he said, hey dude, will you do my eulogy? And I'm like, what? I'm like, I can't do your eulogy. That was the first thing I said, is I can't do your eulogy. Like, why don't you get your family to do your eulogy? Like, I just didn't want to do it because I didn't want to screw it up, because that was kind of the last little bits of my underdog curse in my brain. And he's like, dude, it's my funeral. Suck it up. And because we're friends, so you could talk like that, right? And so I did. I ended up agreeing to do his eulogy. He passed away soon after that. And after I did his eulogy, I was just like, a certain amount of things just happened, and I said, you know what, I really want to write this book, and part of this book is honoring him because his story's in it. But it's just the learnings that so many times we live our life based on what we think other people expect of us, or if we're going to be accepted by other people. And at the end of the day, like, you don't want to be like Rob, where he was near the end, where he knew he had hardly any time left, and you don't want to have regrets at the end and go, damn, like I should have done this, or I should have done that. And I think that was my big inspiration to kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah, man. So when when that's going on, and I know you probably go through this in the book, then, what do people start with that? Because it's one of these things where we do have these societal rules that we kind of all live by. You got this, you get done with high school, you got this massive pressure to go to college. Like, dude, you have no life experience. Like, how the hell are you supposed to pick out what you do? So we live our whole lives of childhood trying to please our parents and please everybody around us, and, go to the college, and a lot of people just get in this rut. And no wonder like 80+% of the population is absolutely miserable, because they're not living their lives for themselves. And like, where do you even begin? Because, I think you get so entwined with it. It's like, well, how do you even begin to reflect, to realize, am I really living my life for myself? And, how do you even recommend somebody start that process? Because I know you probably went deep through that process, just experiencing all of that.
Yeah, and I think, again, especially as a chiropractor, right? Like, you got to rebuild your health, because typically, people change for 1 to 2 reasons, right? Tony Robbins always says this: inspiration or desperation. And unfortunately, I waited till desperation. A lot of people wait for desperation. You make a book like this to hopefully some people get it for inspiration, but again, most of the time it's probably going to be desperation. But if you've been in that rut where you've always been worried about what people think for so long, it tears apart your health, because your autonomic nervous system controls everything in your body, and it can only be in one of two states. It can be in a defensive state, which we call a sympathetic state, that's fight or flight, or it can be in a parasympathetic state, which is called rest and digest or rest and repair. And if you've always been living your life based on what everybody does and you're not doing what you truly would be, it fires off the stress response. And when it fires off the stress response, your brain doesn't work properly, your heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, your digestion goes down, and your immune system drops. Things don't heal properly, and you just start to burn out your adrenals and lose energy, can't sleep, get depressed, all that kind of stuff. When I got kind of at the low of my low, I had to build with my body. So I had to first start to get strong, because if your body's strong, it's been torn down because you haven't been looking after it, it's really, really hard to focus on mindset stuff, because mindset stuff at the beginning is a lot of willpower. And if you are physically tired, you have less willpower, so it's actually harder to do it in the first place. So my first steps are always rebuild your health. So you got to either start exercising, clean up your diet, make sure you're getting some better sleep, good nutrition, all that kind of stuff, just to start.
Yeah. So I got a lot of follow-up questions here, but just, because I know we're talking about the book, and I want to make sure that and all of you that are watching and listening, so we'll have links right below. We'll make it really easy. Anyway, you can just click the link, get the book. But just in case somebody's maybe driving down the road listening to this where they can't click the link, what's the name of the book, and where's the best place to go get it?
The book is called The Underdog Curse, and it's available on Amazon. It's the paperback, and then you can also get it on Kindle. So that's the two places you'll be able to get it right now.
All right, love it, man. So when it comes to your health, because this is something that I'm extremely passionate about, because we're just seeing a deterioration of our society, and what scares the hell out of me is all the childhood obesity. Right? It's just on this massive incline. And you're seeing fifth graders getting type 2 diabetes and developing atherosclerosis, and it's scary as hell. So, when people say take care of your health, a lot of people really don't know where really to begin, or they go, I don't know, because what I've learned with this stuff, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're definitely more educated in this than I am, but it's almost like everything we've ever been taught has kind of been wrong, and we almost got to reteach. We're taught growing up like the food pyramid, and I'm gonna go eat all this fruit and think that that's healthy, and then I realize, okay, well, that's spiking my insulin levels, that's leading to other problems, and where if somebody's not taking care of their health, where do they start? Because it's an intimidating process.
Yeah, I think the number one thing we have to start is movement, and that's my biggest interest in chiropractic, because what happens is if we have poor posture, or we have what's called subluxation. So subluxation is when a vertebra is misaligned, irritating the nerves, and not moving properly. That means that when we move, the joint doesn't move, right? So we have limited range of motion. Our brain needs stimulation from our environment in order to dampen down the stress response. And there's little receptors in every single joint in your body. They're called proprioceptors. And every time you fire a joint, it sends messages to your brain, which helps to calm down that stress response. And probably about 80% of those receptors are in your spine. So really, really important to be able to move your body and move your spine. Because I got a lot of people, they don't move their spine very well. And then they get all inspired and they're like, I'm going to go to the gym and work out. And because they have certain segments of the spine that don't move properly because they're subluxated, the muscles around that joint that doesn't move is atrophied, because you can't strengthen a muscle you can't move. I'm always saying to my patients, if I want to get a nice bicep but I can't move my elbow, it's going to be pretty much impossible to do that. So there's tons of stabilizers all through your spine, and if we don't have good posture or movement, then they're weak. So a lot of times you can actually get hurt at the gym. But the number one thing is going to be movement, I think, because if your spine's moving good, then we got to get out walking. And the funny thing about walking is the benefits of walking 30 minutes a day are insane. If you look at the research that says decreases your chances of dementia by this much, decreases diabetes this much, it seems too easy. That's why people won't do it. It's what are you talking about? Just 30 minutes? You mean it's not like some weird program I got to get on TV where it's no, it's free. You just go outside and walk for 30 minutes every day and just start there. Because as soon as we start to move our body, even the way we break down our glucose. So they've done studies where they take two people, Both of them drink high sugar drink. One does nothing, one exercises. The person who exercises automatically regulates their blood sugar better. Now, that doesn't mean we can exercise and eat crappy food, but that's where we start.
Yep.
Is with movement. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our bodies, I mean, break it down, I guess, we're primates, we're meant to move. And when you look at the average person, they sleep their 8 hours a night, then they get up, they sit down, eat breakfast, and then maybe they move to get dressed, and they sit down for 30 minutes to work, and they sit down for 8 hours at work, and they sit down on the commute home, and sit down, eat dinner, and sit down and watch TV. And the average person probably doesn't even come close to moving 30 minutes a day. I mean, just when you think about it as a whole.
Oh, 100%. And like they say, sitting is the new smoking right now, because the longer you sit, they directly correlate that with a shorter lifespan throughout your life. So we know it's detrimental to your health. The best way, what I do with my patients, I say just put a pedometer on your belt and just do your regular routine. And most of my patients, when I do that, they're horrified, because I'm like, the goal is you want 10,000 steps just to start with. Let's get 10,000 steps. And they'll come back and they'll be like, I only do like 900 or 1,100 steps. And I'm like, okay, see, you're like 10% of just what your goal is. And you probably have heard this tons too. In order to grow something, we want to measure it. And so the cool thing about this is you have someone's wearing a little pedometer. They come home and they're like, holy, was I ever a slacker today? And then they know when they go for a walk that night, which is awesome, because I got to get over those steps. Or they'll just sit there and like kind of march. Because even if you march high knees in one place and you do that for a good 5 minutes, your heart rate's totally going to go up, and that gets the blood flowing. Like that's awesome. Even just taking breaks from sitting throughout the day. I get my patients to put a timer, and every 20 to 30 minutes it just goes off, and I say, go just stand up, do a couple squats, because we also got to remember the biggest muscle groups in our body are our glutes and our low back and our quads. And so if you just do 10 or 15 squats, you just fire off the biggest muscle group in your whole body. And at least doing that periodically throughout the day and just taking breaks is going to make a huge difference.
Are you a fan? I went, I read, I actually heard her on a podcast and wrote her book. She's a muscle physiologist and a biochemist, Katie Bowman, and she's got a great book out there called Move Your DNA. And she's very verbal about, like what you said, sitting is as bad as smoking, and, she'll catch a little flack from it. But as soon as I read it, started listening, I'm like, holy crap. So I went out there and bought everybody in my company these, Human Solutions stand-up desks where you can kind of move them up and down. I mean, are you fans of stuff like that? Is there other extremes though? Because like I find sometimes when I'm standing for 8 hours working, that then I'm kind of jacked up too, and I don't know if I'm not used to it, or if there's other extremes that it can be doing to you too.
Well, we also got to remember it's movement.
Yeah, right.
Standing is not movement.
Yeah.
It is slightly better, because at least you're firing. Like even to stand, you still got to fire off some muscles in your legs and stuff like that. But 100% standing is going to be tough. So I recommend a lot of my patients is, because you can alternate it. You just change it throughout the day. So ideally, if you're changing positions, I would say it's kind of like if I'm doing a flight to Australia, and you've been sitting there for a while, your body knows this is not good. So you shift your butt and you go, okay, this is one corner, and after like half an hour, you're like, shift your butt, and you're like, oh, there's another spot, and then you shift your butt again. Because every time you just shift the angle that you're at, it just gives your body a little bit of a break. So I think it's good to have that alternation between standing and sitting. And again, if you stand and you're getting uncomfortable, you can also just do marching in place too, because even taking that same scenario where you take every 20 or 30 minutes and then you just move around and just stretch out, that'll make a huge difference too, just by itself. But just standing and not moving, again, your hip flexors and everything are just going to look, they're going to tighten up too.
Yeah, so what are some of the things, because, you kind of talked about, like, when you first met your wife, when she at the bar, and she's like, oh, we are not a real doctor. Because I think a lot of people, too, there's a perception out there that, I'll go to the chiropractor if I get in a car wreck and it pops a rib out of place. Or, what are some of the kind of, like, things that most people that probably listen to this may not know that a chiropractor does, and some of the other benefits that they may just be unaware of?
Well, I think I have there's several different benefits. If you go to the very basic level, is movement is life, right? So we've already talked about that. If your spine doesn't move, your stress response gets fired off and things degenerate. So the thing people don't realize is arthritis in your spine happens when things aren't moving correctly over time. So when you have a vertebra out of alignment, it's kind of like a wheel on your car that's out of alignment, and it just wears down faster. So just in general, on the mechanical level, if your spine is not moving properly, it just doesn't last as long. So it just wears down. So proactively, we would want to look after our health. The second thing is the brain and body need to communicate together. And so what we're really focused in neurology, and kind of the stress of neurology is kind of the key that I really love in our practice. We do a couple tests where we have people balance with their eyes closed. And it's amazing. A lot of people can balance with their eyes closed. So if even in your listeners, you just stand on one leg with your eyes open and try to balance for 30 seconds. Now, if you can't do it with your eyes open, then don't try it with your eyes closed. But if you can't do it for 30 seconds with your eyes closed, but you can with your eyes open, there's a disconnect there. And that's the thing, is if your joints aren't moving regularly, they're not giving your brain enough information about your environment. And the nervous system's function is to help you adapt to your environment. So we live in an ever-changing environment with different stressors, physical, chemical, emotional, all the time. And in order for us to be healthy, we need to be able to adapt quickly to all those, right? If we're subluxated or things aren't moving properly and we have that disconnect between our brain and our body, which also prevents us from shutting down that stress response. Even according to the American Medical Association, 60% of all disease is caused from chronic stress, and that's probably the low end. So that's the thing about this whole thing is chiropractic. I always tell people the minor benefit is you'll feel better in the beginning, but that's the minor benefit. The long-term benefit is sustainability of your spine and having you be able to function at the top level. I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and you talk about maximizing your potential in your life, right? When your body is firing on all cylinders, you can adapt to your environment. Then we can really work on purpose. So my tagline is, are you in purpose or are you in protection? Because when your body's out, you're like, and you're kind of dialed down, you're in that protective mode, or we're in that, I kind of tease my patients, you're on the front of the Titanic and you're like, I'm king of the world with that good posture, right? So where do you want to spend your time? So I think that's the key thing, is that chiropractic helps you maintain your spine, adapt to your environment so that you can live to your full potential.
Yep, love it. So if somebody's listening to this, that, if they're in Edmonton, obviously they can look you up and go see you. And in the last week, I've actually had one gentleman, another guest that is in Edmonton, another that's in Alberta. Way. Yeah, so you're my third guest in 7 days that's in Alberta. So which is
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
we should create a mastermind.
I know. Yeah, love it. So. But because just like anything, there's goods and there's bads, right? So if somebody's not in Edmonton, let's say they're down here in Phoenix, how would they go find, if they wanted to, they're like, hey, all this sounds good, but they want to make sure that they're finding the right chiropractor that's going to deliver the results like you are. Is there certain things they should look out for?
Yeah, 100%. There's a spectrum in chiropractic, just like there is in medicine, right? People have different focuses. The interesting thing about chiropractic is a lot of times when people go to a medical doctor and that medical doctor isn't very good, they just go find a different medical doctor. The weird thing is about chiropractic, if they go and have a bad experience at a chiropractic office, they say all chiropractors are bad, that's kind of a weird little thing that happens. But we have the full spectrum in chiropractic. So we have more of the medical end of chiropractors, which are mostly just dealing with pain. So you go in and they'll just deal with whatever it is you're in pain. And as soon as you're out of pain, they're done with you. And then you come back when you're in pain. And then you have more we call vitalistic chiropractic. And vitalistic chiropractic is exactly what I said. We still will deal with people in pain when they come in, but we take them to the next level where we want to optimize their function. And when we optimize their function, we have objective testing. Like we even do what's called heart rate variability, which is this cool machine you put your finger in. And what it does, it actually measures your stress response. So a lot of times you can feel totally fine, especially men, because men are hilarious because they're like, man, I'm good. No, I'm totally good. And you do the heart rate variability and it's tanked. And the problem with men is that if you're under a lot of stress for a period of time, we die fast. Like, I don't know if you've ever known guys that are just doing good and then all of a sudden, boom, have a heart attack. And 1/3 of the time they're dead. Like, it sneaks up on you and you can kind of burn the candle at both ends for a while. This is a really cool thing that actually measures your stress response. I even had one patient who actually quit his job because All of our other tests all improved. So his posture improved, his function improved, his balance improved. With his eyes closed, he knew where he was in space. His muscle tone got better. Everything got better except for his HRV. And that just means you're good on the inside, but you're good on the outside, but on the inside, you're still just like, he actually quit his job, took a couple months off, and then went back and got another job that he really likes, and his HRV came back. And it's pretty cool because when someone has a low heart rate variability, that links to, again, higher mortality. Almost any disease is worse with that reading. And there's tons of research on the web now when you look up at heart rate variability. So when you're looking for someone, you can look for those two different angles. Like, am I going to come in and just get a couple of adjustments just to feel better, or are they going to kind of be almost like an accountability coach too? Because not only do I check their spine, make sure they're working, that their sympathetics are dialed down, but I'm also making sure, hey dude, are you exercising? Like, how's your stress going? Like, kind of a checkup from the neck up. So we do kind of adjustment here, so it's like part chiropractic, part psychologist or coaching.
Yeah, I love it.
But
go ahead.
I was just going to say, in another way too, I when I have my patients going somewhere and I don't really know a chiropractor in the area, I also ask them to ask just their friends for a referral, because just ask around. You go to a chiropractor and then ask what's it like. And again, it depends what your goal are. If you just want to have kind of a quick fix for pain, realize that, that even when the pain's gone, you might still be degenerating and things might still not be good in your health. Or do you want to kind of go more that vitalistic route?
Yeah, because it kind of makes sense, because they're in pain for a reason, and if they're just going to go try to fix that pain, well, they're not really fixing the ultimate reason why they got themselves in that pain in the first place, and just kind of, But so then, when you're speaking to these corporations, right, about reducing stress, now do you, in addition to the techniques and different things that you guys do inside your practice, is there other things that you're a fan of, like, for example, meditation or other ways to help people? Because it's such a busy, crazy, distractive world where it's tough to slow down, man.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm 100% for meditation. I'm also 100%, and it's kind of one of my steps too in the book, is to get some solitude. I think we're so busy running around that if you were to ask somebody who's been busy all the time, worried about everybody else, and you just stopped them for a second and said, what do you really want? They'd be like, I don't know. Because I say the what do I love muscle is atrophied in like tons of people. So again, meditation is great. I think that's awesome because you get some time for yourself. But I also say try to just be alone, because some people have a hard time just being alone. Taking time away, just some me time for themselves, so they can actually kind of go, what would I really like to do? It just slows things down. And when you become kind of more conscious of what you're doing, sometimes you'll just automatically change. Like I always say, awareness is the number one thing, right? And you can't become aware unless you become conscious.
Yep, I love it. So this is something that we talked about before we hit the record button, but then you also talked about at your basketball camp, and it's said in business, and not just business but life, but you're the result of the 5 people that you spend most time with. How important do you feel it is for overall success in life? Because obviously you're a guy that's created a lot of success for yourself. You continue to create more success. How important do you feel that is to really control your environment and those people you're spending time with?
All right. Well, in my book, I have 4 bonds, and I'll just talk about them really quick, because anytime you have a relationship with someone, you create a bond. And when you have a bond with somebody, when they say something to you, it imprints in you more than just some Joe Blow off the street, right? So if I have some Joe Blow off the street and says, nice shirt, like, what's up with that? I'll be like, okay, whatever. Like, it might have hurt my feelings more before, but now I'm like, whatever. But if my wife's like, what's up with that shirt? I'm like, what's wrong? Like, I'm changing it right now. Like, it's like instant, right? So we got to remember that those 5 people we hang around with, they have an influence on us because we've created a bond. So there's 4 different types of bonds that we can have. The first one is a control bond. And if you're in a control bond, they are just, it's like it says, they're controlling you, or they're trying to control you because they're trying to get you to do what they want. And it's not about what you want. And this one's an obvious one, but it's hard for people when they're in it. Whenever you're in it, it's hard to really see. Usually your friends will say, hey, dude, you're totally being controlled by that person. But control bond is the one we want to watch out for. The second one is a sneaky control bond. It's called the guilt bond. So guilt bond, they're still trying to control you, but they're trying to be sneaky by trying to make you feel guilty, but still trying to getting you to do what they want to do, right? And this was the one that always gets me the most, because if someone's a control bond to me, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm not cool with that. You're just being too controlling. But if they kind of make me feel guilty and I think about it, I'm like, ugh, like I'm more susceptible to that one. So I always have to be careful with that one. The third one is a comfort bond. And the comfort bond, I call it the grandma bond because anytime I had a bad day, I'd always be able to go hang out with my grandma's place and she'd give me a peanut butter sandwich and we could watch whatever show I wanted and we could have just hung out and just enjoyed the moment just to get comfortable in the moment. And again, I'm not saying comfort bonds are horrible all the time because it's nice to have them periodically, but if the people you hang around with all the time are just wanting to be a comfort bond to you, they become kind of like crabs in a bucket. Like anytime you're trying to grow or expand, they're kind of like, no, come back down because let's all stay together here in this comfort bond. And so those are the things we want to watch out with. The thing that we're looking for, and this is where I really discovered with my wife, where that was my first true, well, I've had them with coaches, but I call it a power bond. And when you have a power bond, that person who's in your circle of influence takes enough time to find out what's important to you and what your goals are. And then what they do is they hold you accountable to them. And the cool thing about it is a power bond will actually, sometimes they'll use a control bond on you. Like if it's a trainer and I'm like going to do a couple more reps and I'm kind of being a wuss, they'll be like, you're not done. Yeah. Do it again. Right? And they'll actually control me, but it's actually for my benefit because it's actually for my goals. Or they could use a guilt bond on me too, but the difference is the intent is to help me, right? And the other thing that's really important is a power bond also knows, and I don't know if you've ever had this where if you've gone through a big growth phase or you're changing a lot of stuff in your business and you are at you're like on that cusp where you got that twitch where you're just about to like snap, you might need a little bit of a comfort bond. Yeah. Just to kind of not push it over the edge. And so I've really tried the best I can to surround myself with power bonds because I know I'm super influenced by the people hanging out with me. And, if I'm hanging out with someone and they're like, man, maybe don't work so hard, maybe just lay off the gas a bit, take it easy. You're hanging out with someone, they're saying, oh, come on, have a dessert, have another beer, like, kind of doing all that kind of stuff. It does sabotage your goals. And I think that's kind of the key thing that I've learned with making sure you got the right team around you that are power bonds or personality styles.
All right. So, and I love that. I couldn't agree more, man. It's, and it happens. You don't really realize it until you get to that point where you're adamant about leveling up, but then it's apparent everywhere. Oh, you work so hard. You need to slow down. Those things just happen, right? So, but if you're somebody that, let's just say that, somebody reads your book and, it inspires them in a way where they're like, holy crap, I didn't really think this way. Now I'm looking at a new lens. Now I'm starting to level up in their world. And they're doing this. Well, you kind of have people in your life that are amongst these different bonds, right? How do you... because you got people that care about you, but if they're in that, guilt bond, well, you don't want to necessarily fire them for your life, but how do you, kind of, because maybe they haven't been awake yet either, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe, so, because this is, again, this question I get all the time on the podcast. I always get the, when I'm at this point in my life where I feel like I've kind of outgrown, if you will, those bonds of people, but I love them, man. How do I get them to increase or change their bond without being the controlling, whatever, without reversing it? And then the second question, which I'll ask you afterward, but is how do you reach up for those power bonds,
Yeah. So the first thing is you have a couple of different options. So when you have those old bonds that aren't kind of ideal for you now, you kind of have three different options on those. So the first one is you have the option to renegotiate the bond. And again, it's tough, but again, if you want to still spend, because if you're going to still spend the same amount of time with them, we need to kind of renegotiate how that is going to turn out. So maybe just talk about in the past, this is what I felt from you. Sometimes like my goals, I really want to hit these levels. And when I'm hitting these levels and then you come and say like, oh man, you're working too hard or blah, 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 or just take it easy or life's too short. Like why, come out and come out and party with us or do something while, and then you're still working. Let them know how that makes you feel. And it's a tough conversation, right? Because sometimes bonds are not negotiable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So if the bonds are not negotiable, a couple options again. One is that you just have to deliver. I think Jim Rohn said this. Some people are good to hang out with once a week. Some people are good to hang out with once a month, and some people are good to hang out with maybe once a year. So maybe it just has to just be a less frequent amount of time that they spend with you, because what you got to do is you got to open the space, because we'll talk about how to find power bonds. But if you are spending all your time with people and you don't open up space, like, how's that going to work, right? Because you're full. So you need to, like, you'll have to either renegotiate it, dial it back, or in some cases, that's just, if it's so detrimental, because sometimes people live their life unconscious. We kind of get programmed from a kid all the way up. Our hard drive is running us. And if we don't work on any personal development, we're basically running on how we were brought up, like whether it was family, or whether it was teachers, whether it was whatever it was, that kind of gets our hardwire done. And unless we work on ourselves, we're going to stay the same all the way through. And when we initially created the bond with this person, we might have been in a total different mindset. And that's when we made the agreement, right? Sometimes we have to break the agreement.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is, and I'll say this when I get asked this question too, is like, I've never really had to necessarily full on fire a bond, if you will, because you get to the point where they're so uncomfortable being around you anyway that they kind of fire themselves. You know what I mean?
Fire you.
Yeah. And then it makes room for those new bonds, because people get worried about that. Like, how do I tell this person that they're going to become that, like, 1 minute friend, not the 1 day or 1 month friend? And they kind of fire themselves, I mean, have you found that to be true in your life?
100%. And the thing that you got to realize, and again, I realize this huge, because at first, when you're growing, you almost get mad and I did too. I got mad at people. I'm like, I'm trying to grow here. You're trying to sabotage my stuff. And I would get mad at them. But I had to, like, when I reflected back, I realized actually I was breaking the agreement, because I'm the one who made the agreement with you before. Like, say it was a college buddy where all we did was just party the whole time, right? And now I'm like totally love business, and that's where I get my enjoyment from, right? I've changed. You get that thing. You've changed, and they're like, yeah, I have changed. But I did make the agreement at first. So because I am choosing to move forward, it is on my shoulders to actually renegotiate the agreement, because I did change. Yeah. Right? So if you just stay the exact same, you don't have to. It's like, hey, I'm just the same. I don't need to renegotiate agreements. I haven't done anything different since I was in high school.
Well, and you got to watch out for it. I mean, the stat is your average college grad, not just your average person, but your average college grad reads one book for their whole entire life after they're done with college. So even higher educated people still aren't caring about their self-development.
Yeah. And I think too, being prepared for some negative feedback, that's just going to happen. Like, it's kind of like a drug addict, right? So if someone's totally used to being the way that you're being, and all of a sudden you change, they're either going to say somebody brainwashed you, or you're changed, or blah, blah, blah. And they'll create a huge ruckus. I just had a patient right now who, she's total people pleaser, looks after all of her family all the time. And I've been warning her, you have to take time for yourself, because she's busy with her business, busy with her family, busy with business, busy with her family. Gets diagnosed with ovarian cancer, right? It's like, damn, like, because that's going to happen. That's what happens when you're burning yourself out. Something like that's going to happen. And so it's been about 4 or 5 months after surgery. She's coming around. She's exhausted, right? She's breaking down. And so family pressures, they want her to go to a different city for Christmas. This person wants her to do this. And she said, no, I'm staying home. I need to stay home. I need to heal. I can't, like, going to Christmas with a whole bunch of people and all these obligations. I just can't do it. And now they're all pissed at her. Like, they're so mad at her. Yeah. And so you got to realize, when you change, It's like someone who's on crack and they're going through withdrawals. And you have to realize that's going to happen. And as long as you know that's going to happen, you're going to deal with it more. But sometimes people, I think, well, this is including me, I thought, well, I'll just change. And everyone will be like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Look how good you're doing. That's not what happens.
Yeah, and when you break it down, it's silly, right? Because people are like, oh, like, I mean, the tech, you're in society, your average person's like, oh man, you've changed. You look at all negative. Where dudes like you and I are like, oh, thanks for noticing, man. I haven't worked this damn hard to not change. It's a totally different growth mindset compared to that scarcity mindset. So then as you're reaching up for these new friends, right? Because, and again, this is a question I get all the time on the podcast because they're like, well, I want to go surround myself with people making $1 million a year, but these people are busy. Like how do I start reaching up to start surrounding yourself with those, those power bonds?
This is how I did it in chiropractic. I became president of the Edmonton Chiropractic Society like about 10 or 11 years ago, and I was president for 7 years. And even before that, I started just finding my mentors in chiropractic, and I would just bring them to Edmonton for a seminar. So I would just start organizing seminars because any person who's rocking in their field, who's like me and wants to give back, and you're going to host them in your city and say, hey, this guy is rocking. I want them to come to my city and speak to the crowd. I'm going to host them. That is the number one way that you can start spending some good quality time with your mentors. I brought Dr. John DeMartini. He's a chiropractor. He was a chiropractor. He travels the world now. He's out of Houston. He's probably like one of the most expensive chiropractic speakers that there could have been. And I brought him the first time after I went to a seminar. I'm like, this guy's awesome. I brought him to Edmonton, and the people who attended the seminar could come to the seminar for $1,200 a person. And I couldn't get enough people to it. So it ended up costing me about $6,000 or $7,000 because I couldn't cover his fee and everything else. And I didn't sleep for about 3 weeks before the event because I knew I was like in danger of not filling those seats. But I got to spend the whole weekend with him. And again, I think his regular consulting fee is $2,000 an hour. And I got so much more time with him. I was a little bit resentful at first because I was kind of mad. So I said, that's it. I'm bringing him back again. And that time I only lost about $3,000 or $4,000. So that was better. But I brought him. I brought Jack Canfield to Edmonton when I was president of the Edmonton Chiropractic Society. We like saved up from a bunch of seminars because he's $35,000 for a 2-hour keynote. And we put him in a big, we have this place called the Windspear Center in Edmonton, which it fits 1,800, beautiful theater. And I wanted to have it a night of health and success because the philosophy on how to be healthy through chiropractic is exactly the same as how to be successful in your business, right? And so then I got to bring him, and then I got to hang out with Jack Canfield. I still have a picture having a beer with him after, like that's how I initially started it. And then now once we started traveling with Brandy, a lot of these guys now are my friends, and that's cool. But if you don't have a lot of money at the beginning, try to set up your time. So like for me, if you do the seminar better so you don't lose that much money, it won't cost you that much money. But setting up a seminar is a lot of time. So if you have more time than money, set up an event or set up something where you can kind of get them gathering together, or just going to seminars. I think even just going to seminars, you're going to meet like-minded people. They might not be the top dogs in your field, but they're working towards being a top dog. And there's lots of guys that I met when I went to like my first DeMartini seminar, a chiropractor who's like one of my best friends now in Edmonton. Like I only met him at that seminar, and he's rocked it, and I've rocked it, and I met him 12 years ago. And so it's cool. Like you're kind of like the young bucks that are coming up, that you will be really successful down the road. And then when you meet each other, when you're both starting out, super accountability partner, like it's awesome.
So what keeps you, personally driving at the capacity that you are? Because we find that good becomes the worst enemy to greatness. It's so easy to, because dude, you could just be like, hey man, I'm going to work my 3.5 days a week. I've got some money coming in. I can just chill, and be good, good for the rest of my life. What keeps you not settling for good enough, leveling up and going after greatness?
Well, I did do that. It's funny. It's like, how do you do that problem? Oh, I did that problem. I did make that mistake. But again, Rob was a huge thing for me. Like really, once you have death that close to you, like one of your best friends, and and you realize like life is so short. He died at 45. Like it's life's too short. Like you got to go back and think, hey, I'm on my deathbed. What are the most common regrets that people have when they're dying? And there's a book out there, I can't remember what the name of it was, but they did go over what are the top regrets. And one of the number one things is people wish they would have done what they wanted and not worried about what everybody else was thinking. Like that's like one of the number one things. And I'm like, you know what? There's so many more cool things that I can do. And it's funny because you are right. Like once you have enough money, you're comfortable, right? Comfortable is dangerous. That's why I love the Rocky movies, because the Rocky movies are totally like that, right? He's like totally not doing that good. And then he's training like crazy. He's the underdog. And he doesn't win the first time. So he keeps training and then he wins. And then he becomes all lazy and cocky and then he gets his butt kicked.
Yeah.
Right. And then he's like, oh man, I got to get serious again. Like, I think it's finding that kind of fine line between being addicted to being an underdog or being arrogant, and being able to flip back and forth and be able to try new things. And really, if you surround yourself with power bonds, they'll give you some heck too. You're like, dude, what have you done lately? You're getting lazy, right? If you hang out with control bonds, they love that relaxing thing. They're like, oh, we've worked hard. We deserve this. Let's just take a chill and let's just relax. So I think too, just analyzing who you're spending your time with and spread your reach. Like the cool thing about chiropractic with me and my wife is that now we've gone to 9 countries. So we get to meet all the on fire guys in all the countries around the world. And then we keep in touch with them and we hear what they're doing. And when you hear what someone else is doing, it inspires you and you're like, yeah, I'm doing this. And then they all support me for my book and they're all like so excited about it for me too, right? And then you're like, well, why don't you write a book? Well, I've been too lazy. Well, do it, slacker, come on. Yeah. And so you kind of hold each other accountable.
Yeah, love it. So what what was going on when you said that you got to that point where it was good enough? Because for those that maybe aren't hardcore driven entrepreneurs like you, they may be like, it's easy for people just to be like, oh, well, Dr. Donald's just greedy. He just, there are people, you get these questions like, well, when's enough? It's like, what the hell are you even talking about? What do you, because a lot of people, again, just think it only boils down to money. What was going on internally, when you were settling for good enough and not going for greatness at that time?
I think it was, and I think part of it too was I stopped looking after myself, because I think it's kind of like when you look after yourself, you're working on your self-worth, I think. And when you work on your self-worth, I think you put your physical body in growth. Like your physical body is the same as your brain. You can be in growth or defense. If you're not looking after your body, you go into defense, which makes it a lot easier in your mind to kind of shut her down and say things are easier. But I think what turned it around is when I got a trainer like 3 years ago, and I've been like regular on that and staying in awesome shape. Surrounding yourself with the right people, I think the more you grow, the more you can contribute. Because I think one of the most exciting things I think for me is going to be at the end of my life when I have this massive pool of money that I can contribute to any school that I want, any cause that I want. That creates the huge change. Like the Rockefellers when they did all the libraries. Like when you have like, I think it was Rockefeller who said he was going to spend the first half of his life making as much money as he can, and then the last half of his life giving it all away. Like I think that would be cool, because that's your legacy. And I think the thing that people don't understand is they say, oh, you're greedy, but if you never collect, and again, that's the number one thing I learned as well, is save your money.
Yeah.
Because if you make more money and you spend it all, that's totally a waste. But if you save your money, I always say it's kind of like walking across the carpet. I guess here in the winter when it's cold, you kind of get an electric charge. So when you touch someone, you're like, it's like it's electrical. But if you have no charge built up, you're kind of not electrical. So if you go through your life and you go, well, I'm not going to be greedy, there might have been a big cause, or you could have inspired other people to step up in their life, but you have no resources left to be able to do that. And I think that would be a cool thing, is that, near the end of your life, you have so many resources you could inspire. And I think I always look back at like me, little Don, when he was like, whatever, like 17. Like I'd love to be able to go back and inspire a whole bunch of little Dons, like who had dreams, but wasn't sure if they could actually do it. And then now you're doing it. Just a real funny story. This year for my 45th birthday, we went to Waikiki. And the reason that we went to Waikiki is I went on a family vacation when I was 18. And I was super grateful for my family because they couldn't really afford it, but we went. But we had to like cook all of our food in our hotel, and we couldn't really do anything because we could just afford to get there. And I would walk up and down the beach. I'm 18 years old. Back home in Canada, I can go to the bar. So I'm 18-year-old guy. People are having fun in the restaurants and the lounges, and it's just like there's music and all this other stuff's going on. And I was sitting out on that pier right in Waikiki, which I went back to that exact same pier. And I was just thinking, I'm like, one day I'm going to come back and I'm going to go eat wherever I want and have whatever fun I want and just have a blast in Waikiki. And we did. And I told Brandy that story, and I went right back to the same pier, and I almost envisioned it was like one of the Terminator movies where he went back and visited his own self when he was a kid. And I almost wanted to go back and just visualize that and just come back to my younger self and said, hey, dude, we did it. So that's cool.
Yeah, I love that, man. So, one question that I'll ask a lot on the podcast, and you just kind of alluded to it, but is, hey, if I could go back and inspire the 17-year-old Don, right? But then you get to a point where maybe we didn't have the mental capacity to really understand or comprehend what we would have told them. But if you could go back and just give yourself a couple pieces of advice to inspire yourself, knowing what you know now, to have that influence your 17-year-old self, what would that look like?
I think I would tell them about the fear you have about not being loved or being alone is not as bad as you think it's going to be. Because I think that people pleaser mentality was stuck in my head that I was so afraid that if someone didn't approve of me or rejected me, which it wouldn't have been me, but I thought it was me, but it would have been maybe my ideas or what I was doing, that I would like die or something. I seriously thought I would die or something. Like I thought that I would not be able to survive that. And just to somehow be able to talk through some examples of people who've gone through that. And, it is painful. Like if you go through rejection or you have to break some bonds, right? And I had to break some bonds and it was extremely painful. But the funny thing is that if they were meant to be, they can be renegotiated even if it takes like a couple of years of a broken bond. That can be renegotiated on a new agreement, which makes both people a lot happier, even though you have to go through some trauma to get there, but you're still going to be okay.
Love it. Powerful words. So I know that we're going long on time here. I know you're a busy man, got things to get back to. So just one last question for you. If something happened today and you were financially wiped out, something, I don't know, something, market crashes, whatever that may be. But everything that you know now today. You've retained all your knowledge. Health's good, family's good, but financially you're starting from scratch. Knowing what you know now, what's like the first couple things you would do differently, or you would do starting out immediately to go out there and rebuild?
I think I would. Again, I'd probably use a lot of my contacts because again, contacts are pretty important. I might move. I might even go to a different location. I'd probably go somewhere. I know, like if I'm going to do a chiropractic office, I know I'm going to look at good location where I love to live. That would be awesome. I do love Edmonton, but it is kind of cold in the winter. The only thing that holds me here is love of the Edmonton Oilers. I love our Oilers, and so that's kind of one of the cool things that holds me there. Again, just starting stuff up right. Like if you're to start a whole new business again, and you're just to start it with the right procedures and the right mindset and all that, it would just be such a huge difference to grow your business rather than starting like through trial and error where you're just doing stuff and like not learning it right. Like it would just be done right the first time. Like I think that would be a huge thing. And really knowing now that you need to create value, because once you create value that people need, that's how you're going to attract more people in your life. So whether it's coaching clients or doing seminars or doing something, you're always looking for a need, and you'll fulfill that need. Rather than before, I was just going to open my practice and it was all about me and people are going to come. I'm going to look for the need and go solve that.
With that, now that you're coaching, because I'm sure, because I have a coaching program too, and it's for real estate agents, but it's like the program I wish to God existed day one when I started, right? It would have saved me millions, or maybe, maybe that many, much more. Do you ever find yourself getting, kind of, I don't know, frustrated? Well, I don't know what the right word is for it, but it's like when people have resistance to paying such a small amount of money to learn it from the beginning. And you get that passion of like, dude, this will eliminate 6 years of headaches, and maybe you not even making it for this small investment,
Yeah. No, and I think, again, it's all about creating that value, right? Like if someone gets free information, they don't value it. And so a lot of times, well, it's funny. My first coach that I got, I paid him lots of money, and I didn't listen to what he said, and I didn't implement it. So I was kind of the bull. So I never get too frustrated if people aren't totally implementing it, because I didn't do it the first time because I wasn't ready for it. But I think for me, I coach just because I love it. So it's kind of like staff. Like I pre-qualify the people that I coach with a lot more now, because I pick who would actually inspire me to be able to work with them. When I first started coaching, I took on a few clients that were basically, if you imagine an airplane and it's been crashing from 30,000 feet and it's at about 3,000 feet, and then they have you jump on their plane going, I'm about to go bankrupt and then everything's going to blow up, help me. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah. and for my personality, that is too stressful. So I only pick people who are kind of where I was, where they're not doing horribly, but they're not doing amazing. They kind of maybe just got stalled out and they want to level up to the next level. And I do that for my own well-being and brain care as well. I do that also with my patients. So I just become a little bit more kind of focused on who would be my ideal person to work with. And again, if they don't want to pay for it, then they're not my ideal person too. But I also got to make sure I communicate it properly, what the value is. So I don't know if that answered your question. But.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it, man. So much amazing information dropped. And those that are watching, listening, I know we end every podcast with this, you guys, but information without implementation is truly just the start of delusion. It's not information that's power. It's taking action on that information that creates power in your world. And Dr. Don shared so many amazing pieces of advice, really for I don't think there was pretty much an aspect of life and business we didn't cover. Take something that you learned today, take action on it so you can go out there and create the life that you know you want and deserve. And again, there's going to be a link right below, right to Dr. Don's book. Also, we'll have his website on there, so if you want to reach out to him, connect with him, all of his information will be right below, so make sure to take action on that. And Dr. Don, truly appreciate you being here. I know how busy you are, my friend, and this has been an awesome honor.
This is awesome. I really had a good time, so it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you guys, we will see you next time.